Conspiracies No Longer Theories by Janine Linhan, Part 3. Human and Animal Hybrid. Fact, not fiction. In this video, we will explore the factual evidence that scientists with government approval are creating subhuman species, mocking us, the people, with the truth in film and TV. But in reality, another example of man playing God. Just like history has proven in the Book of Enoch, in this video we will look at the scientific and biblical evidence as follows. Thank you for watching.
Human chimeras living among us, it's only science fiction for right now. Yesterday, the Senate passed the Endless Frontier Act, a bill that commits nearly $250 billion to promote emerging technologies so that America can keep pace with Chinese innovation. Back in May, Democrats shot down an important amendment outlawing U.S. participation in research that would create human-animal hybrids, also known as chimeras. China's already doing it, announcing in April that an international team successfully grew human monkey embryos and sustained them for 20 days in a lab. The only question is, what will they do next? Currently, the National Institutes of Health has banned U.S. funding for chimeric research, but that ban could very well be lifted. And who's to say that these agencies will play by the rules anyway? Remember, President Obama banned funding for gain-of-function research back in 2014, but New York AD found a way around it. They laundered, it's the NIAID group, and they laundered hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Wuhan Institute of Virology through a non-profit group called the EcoHealth Alliance. The rest is history. Chimeric research is a Pandora's box, that's obviously from hell, that should not be opened. But the scientific community, spurred on by their own hubris, may very well open it, using American taxpayer dollars. And if that happens, the Democrats will have blood on their hands for not joining the GOP and stopping it when they had a chance. Joining me now for a reaction, I don't even believe, Lara Logan, here we are, it's the 21st century, we're two very smart women, we have to talk about chimeras and how maybe the government might do it. You've been very involved in your research and stories and coverage on certainly COVID, what's been happening there. Give me your take on the seriousness of this. China's doing it and what we have to be aware of.
You know, Tammy, one of the things that strikes me the most about this story is there's an old adage, you know, be careful of what you don't know. And that has never been more true than with this subject. What exactly do we not know here about how far, what is the level of involvement the U.S. has had in any kind of research like this? And what else has the NIH and other divisions of the NIH been involved in? Because when it comes to Dr. Fauci and what we know about COVID, we're just beginning to find out, right? We're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of uncovering what was really going on with gain-of-function research. And the whole sort of smokescreen of the Wuhan lab really obscures the fact that Dr. Fauci and the NIH through NIAID had been funding gain-of-function research for years. And there's a lot of money that's missing here. And there's another U.S. agency that's missing from this equation. It's called DARPA, you know, which is the Defense Research Agency. So what were DARPA and Dr. Fauci and the NIH doing with gain-of-function and various other programs like this one, which we know so little about? And this is really the moment now for a reckoning. This is time for the American people to start paying attention to these bills that pass through Congress, that get banned, that get unbanned, that get circumvented, and for us to start asking for real accountability. Because what we've seen is that the coronavirus, you know, that spread all over the world and caused such panic and still causes such hysteria in so many quarters. Well, you just speak to someone like an oncologist who deals with bone marrow cancer. They'll tell you that they've been identifying hundreds of coronaviruses for years and years. And so this is one of many subjects that we know very, very little about. And every day that goes by, we get the stench of manipulation and dishonesty is growing stronger.
You know, and I think this is part of what allows us to find this information out. You know, there's the theory that ignorance is bliss, right? And yes, not being aware of things is kind of peaceful. But the fact of the matter is, these things happen anyway. And this particular bill, and this is what Congress tends to do, was about trying to, keep up with China. But then it became a Christmas tree. There was like over 200 amendments. And all the lobbyists got in because, of course, it's going to have to pass. So get in whatever it is you want. And this is what they do without any consideration about the impact on the average person. COVID is one thing, right? Mass death. Here you're talking about changing the nature of life. And this is what, of course, is so shocking to me. We got just a couple of seconds left, but this is a real game changer.
It is. And you know what's so interesting about it to me, Tammy? I'm not particularly religious, but what it keeps reminding you of, we can create robots that mimic humans. Now we want to take animals and humans and blend them. And we also want to take meat and we want to grow some version of food
this is
in
all
a laboratory from
backfire.
the cells of meat. But you know what we can't do? We can't create life. We as human beings don't create life. And no amount of ingenuity and science is going to change that.
And the things that we do, Laura, thank you so much. This is the kind of things that get you karmically, and we've got to stand up for ourselves.
In 1940, a Soviet doctor attempted to keep the head of a dog alive after it had been removed from its body. And as you'll see in this video, the experiment seems to have been a success. No one knows for sure whether this footage is real or fake, but what we do know is that experiments just like this did happen in the Soviet Union. On the 21st of May 1908, Charles Guthrie successfully created a two-headed dog. He removed the head of one dog and grafted it onto the body of another. The monster dog died after 26 minutes. The strange part is that there are many more accounts of other doctors doing the exact same thing. The notorious Soviet doctor Vladimir Demikov created 20 of the two-headed dogs, with one surviving for a whole month.
Borre todo el lado oscuro. Borre este es el marranito humano. Los podemos ver, tiene cejas de humano, nariz de humano,
Frente con bamba.
Y dientes.
Venga para acá, papi. Venga para acá, papi. Venga para acá, mi chiquiflow.
Get vaccinated. This is crazy. Tom Horn is joining us. Tom, before the break, we started getting into what are they doing, and you left off at a place that kind of made my hair stand up on end. You were talking about already developed adult versions of whatever this is that they're creating. I don't even know if we call it a human, but whatever this is that they made, are you saying there's actually adult versions of this?
Yeah, well, the reference that you had made actually to, and these are all things that people can Google, the Mail Online article, 150 human-animal hybrids grown in UK labs. And by the way, that is just a drop in the bucket. There are literally tens of thousands of laboratories around the world, here in the United States, in Britain, in Austria, in China, all conducting the same kind of research. And what the public has been led to believe in the past is that this only, that these were just embryos. And why would you create an embryo that's part human, part animal? It's been driven by the pharmaceutical industry that uses human-animal chimeras to get around the difficulties for getting permission to do experiments on humans, which is a daunting task. But if you create a human-animal embryo, now you can test drug therapies on that human-animal embryo and see if the human enzymes or the human genetics in that construct are reacting in the way that you want it to. So it accelerates pharmaceutical industry, which is, giant monster corporations around the world that stand to make literally billions, if not trillions of dollars in the future for new drug therapy. So that's what's been driving much of this technology. But and here's something for people to Google. Go and Google this headline: scientists want debate on animals with human genes. And they will find a Reuters, so this is not Weekly World News, right? Reuters news article, and the opening paragraph will say a mouse that can speak, a monkey with Down syndrome, dogs with human hands and feet. British scientists want to know if such experiments are acceptable or if they go too far in the name of medical research. There's a long backstory behind this, so we don't have time to detail on this program, but the bottom line is these were scientists that had made application in Britain to receive public funds, tax dollars, for doing research at the embryonic level. Well, they were back. In this headline, they were back about, let's say 1.5 years ago now. I forget what the date on this headline was. And they wanted to know if the public would now be willing to let them go to the next step, Josh, to start developing islands of Dr. Moreau, where they could raise these human-animal chimeras to full maturity to do long-term research for the pharmaceutical industry, but also military aspects. And they hinted in the article that they were already doing it anyway. Well, fast forward now to just July of this year, and the Academy of Medical Sciences in Britain admitted that the science not only is advancing so quickly, but that literally thousands of these things have been created and are being studied. And it was a day after they published their report called Animals Containing Human Material that the Mail Online admitted to the one, I think it was actually 2 laboratories in Britain that had created these 150 human-animal hybrids. But if somebody wants to email me, I will send them. I have the 200-page Academy of Medical Sciences report so they could verify this for themselves. And what do they talk about in this report? Number one, extensive modification of the brains of animals by implantation of human-derived cells. I'm quoting now, which might result in altered cognitive capacity approaching human consciousness or sentience or human-like behavioral capabilities. This is in the summary of the report. Secondly, get this, Josh, quote, situations where functional human gametes, we're talking now about eggs, sperm, might develop from precursor cell types in an animal, and where fertilization between human and animal gametes might then occur. We're literally talking about the capacity for cross-species creation. And then finally, cellular or genetic modifications that can result in animals with aspects of human-like appearance, skin type, limb and facial structure, characteristics such as speech. End quote. So, the genie is way out of the bottle, and this is really just one tiny aspect of what is going on inside of this kind of research. Look at the MIT MTech conference 3 weeks ago that says get ready for a new human species. Go right now to the Foreign Policy magazine, the Washington, D.C. based award-winning magazine on global politics, economics, the kind of stuff you talk about. and look at their current article over there called The Future Is Now, in which they're talking about, in the very near future, the emergence of a new form of human species. So what can I say? The technology is here. Now then you have to start imagining how quickly is this going to unfold? How quickly are we going to start doing to humans what we already are doing to plants and animals? And then what the social, maybe also spiritual implications of that might be.
You know, a few things come to mind here. One of them is X-Men, because this sounds very much like the X-Men movies. The other one is Planet of the Apes, where the apes get the ability to communicate and strategize together. And then the third one is kind of like Narnia, where you have that little goat boy, where he's like half human, half goat. And my mind is still telling me, even though I've been reading into this for 4 or 5 days now, my mind is still telling me, no way, this has to be fake. It has to be April 1st. But this is actually posing a threat to humanity. Are these new creatures, do we call them humans, Tom? Are these new creatures, do they have the same rights as humans? I mean, can scientists execute them? I mean, do they have Miranda rights? I mean, what other implications does this have?
You're asking all the right questions, Josh, and so are other ethicists and bioethicists around the world. For instance, Jewish bioethicists right now are saying if a person is part cow and part human, how much of them would need to be cow before we could offer them as a burnt sacrifice? By the way, in Britain, when the embryology discussions were going on, which is kind of the backstory to that headline, I said people should Google "Scientists Want Debate on Animals with Human Genes," and then they should go and look at or email me and I'll send them the Academy of Medical Science 200-page report. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
You were talking about how the cow-human mix.
Oh, yeah. This discussion is going on around the world. It isn't just Britain. The United States, by the way, published its own report. There's a report called Splicing Life. It's a 20-year-old report. And it's a U.S. report. It was done by the President of the United States commissioned it, that said that within 20 years, a la today, that this science would begin producing a new form of humanity. There's another 500-page report from the U.S. From the United States that was called Converging Technologies. Same thing, that sometime around the year 2012, a new form of humanity would begin to emerge. And your question was, my train of thought, I apologize, just came back to me. You know, what kind of threat might this pose? There is a report that came out 12 months ago. It's called Global Governance 2025 at a Critical Juncture. Why is this important? Because it was published by the United States Office of the Director of National Intelligence, working with the European Institute of Security Studies. And what this report is about is what might be the trigger that would set in motion the sudden need for a world government, a global government. What could cause what threat could suddenly cause all of the governments of the world to suddenly need to come together under one umbrella in mutual defense of a potentially catastrophic threat?
猴娃的小名叫全子，大名曾繁盛，已经30岁了。猴娃不会说话，只能喊出几种简单的声音。更让人惊奇的是，30岁的猴娃从小到大，不论寒暑，从来都是这样赤身裸体，但是他却从来也没有生过病。录像中怀抱孩子的就是猴娃的母亲。对于突然来到的王方辰等人，他3缄其口，一语不发。 而侯娃的父亲也始终不肯面对镜头。对于这一点，和王方辰同去的孙志勇记忆犹新。
我们进去之后就是喊可以进来吗？可以，就是在门口嘛，就是我们想跟你聊聊，可以不可以啊？然后半天都不出来人，然后他父亲呢出来，在隔着门跟我们说了几句话，然后我们呢就把我们准备的礼物送给他之后，才让我们进去坐在院子里边。他母亲呢对这个我们的到来呢很不高兴，就是很不喜欢我们看。
对侯娃身世的回避，更增加了大家的好奇心。难道他们真的有什么难言之隐？在与侯娃父母的交谈中，侯娃开始接近大家。在这个时候，王方辰才有机会仔细地观察他。
赤身露体，脑袋。
human-animal hybrids to be developed in Japan after ban controversially lifted. Supporters say research could be the first vital step to growing organs that could be transplanted into people. This is from The Independent. I'll read a few bits of this article, and then after that I'll get into how this correlates to the book of Matthew, the book of Giants, as well as the book of Enoch. So it starts off by saying, human-animal hybrids are to be developed in embryo form in Japan after the government-approved controversial stem cell research. Human cells will be grown in a rat and mouse embryos, then brought into term in a surrogate animal as part of experiments set to be carried out at the University of Tokyo. Supporters say the work, led by renowned geneticist, not going to pronounce that, could be a vital first step towards eventually growing organs that can be transplanted into people. But opponents have raised concerns that scientists are playing God. They worry that the human cells could stray beyond the targeted organs into other areas of the animal, effectively creating a creature that is part animal, part person. 100% that will happen. They already have the capability to do that completely. For this reason, such prolonged experiments has been effectively banned or gone unfinanced knowingly across the world in recent years. So that's pretty much the gist of the article. They're going to get into it. He says that they're going to take it really slow. They're only going to gestate these embryos for at the most up to 15.5 days, and that it will be years before they fully grow one and let one fully develop. Supposedly, that's what they say. Now, as well, as I have mentioned before, and something just to always be aware of, when stuff like this comes out and information is released to the public, you can guarantee that these experiments have been done behind closed doors. I mean, that's just common sense. These people in the government, they're trying to compete with other governments and always trying to be ahead of technology and be the leading powers, really. You can guarantee if they're admitting it to the public, it's already been done behind closed doors, and it's already been done on a way farther scale than what these beginning baby steps they supposed to. The very interesting thing about this and why it piques my interest is because of its correlation to Bible prophecy, the end times, and just the times that we're currently living in. One of the most famous statements within Bible prophecy that anybody who studies and researches Bible prophecy knows of is that in the end times it will be as in the days of Noah. Matthew 24:37 through 39 talks about this. It says, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." So, the end times and the coming of Jesus Christ, his second coming, will be as in the days of Noah. It's super interesting, especially when we look at some of the extra biblical texts that talk about the days of Noah. Back in those days, the fallen angels were on the earth corrupting the seed of man, as well as just corrupting humans in general, teaching them forbidden knowledge, things that humans weren't supposed to ever learn. This is why the flood came. God brought a flood on the earth to wipe out the fallen angels, as well as the corruption that they were creating, the giants, the monsters that I'll explain in a minute. These different things that the fallen angels had brought and taught and were creating through their corruption from rebelling against God and being cast to the earth and corrupting the human race. This is why God brought a flood upon the earth. This is one of the reasons that God says in the story of Noah that men's hearts were just fixed on evil continually. They've been taught these horrendous things through the fallen angels. And then, of course, other humans corrupt as well, and that's just, how it goes. They start corrupting each other. But these fallen angels on the earth were the cause of this absolute corruption. In Genesis 6:4, as many know, it says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became the mighty men which were of old, men of renown, the giants. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that the imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." And that's what was going on. And then it gets into the story of Noah and how God had to wipe out all living things because all living things, including animals, had been corrupted. And we know this through such extra biblical texts, as they're called, words that are not part, or books that are not part of the Bible, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants. The Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch has some very interesting things to say about this subject. And just to state, I don't believe that this is the Word of God, but this is history. This is the history. These people weren't just sitting around making this stuff up. This is the things that were actually going on. One of the most interesting things from the Book of Giants, which we only have fragments of it. Many of the old manuscripts and texts, many of them are just fragmented pieces, and so we don't have the entire book, the entire letter, whatever the case may be. But this fragment from the Book of Giants is one of the most interesting, and it's 4Q531 fragment 2, and it says, "They defiled," blanks because the fragments, "they begot giants and monsters. They begot, and behold, all the earth was corrupted." So again, here we have another text talking about the fallen angels interbreeding with humans as well as animals, creating giants and monsters. Those are two different things. If they were the same, they would just say giants or monsters. Completely different. Later on in the Book of Giants, it talks about all these different animals. They took 200 of donkeys and this and that and this and that, and they took them for miscegenation, which is interbreeding. So the fallen angels were interbreeding with animals, creating beings, half fallen angel, half animal. And some of these things could actually think. They had the ability to, within the Book of Giants, it says that one of them had a dream of a giant flood coming, and they actually went to Enoch to get an interpretation of the dream, and he told them that is what would take place. So it's just extremely interesting. The fallen angels were mixing themselves with humans, creating giants, as well as themselves with animals, creating monsters. Exactly what is going on right now in Japan, and as well as just everywhere. It's already been going on. These tests have been going on. Of course, they're proceeding into figuring out how to mix these things. I mean, they've already released in the past, they've cloned sheep, they've mixed some animals they've mixed animals, not human and animals, but here they go, mixing humans and animals, just like they did back in the days, just like the Book of Giants tells us. This is the forbidden knowledge that God didn't want us to have. If you read the Book of Enoch, it talks about the different angels that came down and the different things that they taught to humans, witchcraft, making weapons, one of them creating mirrors and talking about makeup and stuff like that. They taught humans knowledge that God did not want them to know. God was grieved. It talks about in Genesis that God repenteth that he made man. It grieved him that he had made man, and so that's why he decided to flood the earth. That's why he gave Noah, who he had found favor with, the ability to know and to understand that the flood was coming, so Noah, his sons, and their wives could get on the ark and survive. And we know that Noah was not pure in the sight of that he was sinless. First off, because we know that Jesus is the only one who ever lived who was sinless. The Bible also tells us that no, there's not one who is good, but all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. That's what the Bible teaches. As well as we know is after they made landfall, Noah, he started to become a drunkard, and his sons had to cover him up, his nakedness up. So Noah wasn't this pure, perfect person, but he was not corrupted. I believe that it's because he was not corrupted by the genetics of the fallen angels, as well as he hadn't turned aside to the teachings of the fallen angels, the forbidden teachings that are mentioned in the Book of Enoch. So we know through biblical texts that fallen angels intermingled with human beings, creating the men of renown, the mighty men of the old days, Genesis 6:4. So we can look at these other extra biblical texts from stories of the people at the time talking about what was going on, and it's not a far stretch to think that they were mixing as well with animals and creating intelligent monsters, which is what the book of Giant says multiple times. They created monsters, angel and animal mixes, and it's just extremely interesting to see that that's what's going on right now. Human-animal hybrids to be developed in Japan after the ban that was in place to not mix humans with animals. We're seeing this take place, just like in the days of Noah. But again, this stuff has been going on, of course. If it's mentioned to us, then of course they've been doing it. A good thing to look at is some of the planes that we use in the Air Force and stuff like that in the United States that they openly talk about and openly admit were created and built in the 1960s. So when it was way classified then, and then when they start to open this stuff and release it and say this is what we have, they've already had it for at least 10 to 20, 30 years, if not longer. It's unimaginable what they actually have that of course they won't release because many reasons really. But a very interesting correlation to the days of Noah, because the exact same thing is starting to go on. We'll see if they start creating monsters. Maybe they start creating some of the monsters that will be unleashed in the end times. We know, as the Bible says, and as I mentioned in my last video, men's hearts will fail them for things coming upon the earth. So one way or another, something's going to be walking the earth that's going to cause and strike so much fear into people that they will actually die through fear. And there's so much unimaginable things that are going to take place during the time of the book of Revelation is revealed on the earth that, and sure, it's a mixture of things, the bottomless pit, open portals, people creating these monsters that get on the loose. I mean, they already have monsters, I'm sure, underground, and they've tested and created these things and they have them living. It's unimaginable really to think about what's truly going on. But without a doubt, they have these hybrids already. And this is not the beginning of these tests taking place. Very interesting, just more of Matthew 24 taking place. I mean, if you haven't read Matthew 24, read Matthew 24 and then look at the correlations going on in the times that we're living in right now. For sure, the beginning of sorrows, maybe even the beginning of the tribulation. Not sure exactly, but I would say for sure, at least, the beginning of sorrows. And one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, to remember from Matthew 24 is 44 through 46. And it says, "Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing."